My name is Trevor Whitmore, and I work at Area 51. Not a nickname, not a cover, not some classified sounding term for a different base. I mean the actual place. The one people have been talking about for decades. The one tied to Roswell, the one tied to sightings, the one tied to every story about things in the sky that don't move the way our aircraft move. It's real. The crash in Roswell in 1947. It happened. We recovered material from it. We recovered bodies. Not human. I wasn't the only one either. There have been others. Some crashes, some landings, some we tracked before they even hit the ground. Over time, everything that could be recovered got moved to one place. Area 51. That's what the base actually is. Not a testing ground for jets, not just a runway in the desert. It's a storage and containment site for things that don't belong here. There are hangars with ships that were pulled out of impact sites. Some are intact, smooth and sealed, no visible entry points. Some are split open like something forced its way out from the inside. Some still have interiors that don't match anything we understand. No wiring, no controls, no recognizable structure. Just surfaces that respond when you get too close, like they're aware you're there. There are rooms with bodies, different shapes and sizes. Some small, thin, gray, like you hear people describe. Others not even close to that. Wrong proportions, wrong structure. Things that don't look like they were meant to stand upright or breathe the way we do. Some of them came out of the ships, and some were found near them. A few were still alive when they were recovered. I'm not a scientist. I don't run tests or study them. I'm part of containment and recovery. I move things from one place to another. I seal rooms when something gets loose. I clean up after incidents. If something breaks, leaks, or spreads, I'm one of the people they send in first to stop it before it gets worse. Most of the real work happens underground. The surface base is there, but it's not the important part. The runway, the buildings, the radar, that's what people see from the outside. That's what shows up in satellite images. That's what gives them something to talk about. What matters is below that. You go through multiple checkpoints before you get anywhere near it. Armed guards at the perimeter, then internal security, then scans that check more than just your ID. You don't bring anything personal down there. No phone, no watch, nothing that wasn't issued inside that facility. And then you take the elevator. Long drop. No windows. Just a steady hum and the feeling that you're going deeper than you should be. When the doors open, it's not the same place anymore. Steel corridors, reinforced doors, cameras everywhere. Air that's been filtered so many times barely smells like anything. Every section is labeled, but nothing is explained unless you're cleared for it. You learn the layout fast, not because anyone teaches you, but because you don't want to get lost down there. Some levels are storage, some are labs, some are containment. You don't go where you're not assigned. You don't open doors you're not cleared for. You don't ask questions that don't have answers. On my first day, I expected some kind of briefing, something official. A room, a supervisor, maybe a presentation explaining what we were dealing with. There wasn't one. They gave me a badge, assigned me to a shift, and handed me a single sheet of paper. 5 lines, that was it. No explanation, no context, just 5 rules. I remember reading them and thinking they were extreme, but still manageable. The first one sounded like a contamination protocol. The second one sounded like equipment safety. The third one didn't make much sense at all, but I figured it would once I saw more of the facility. I asked the guy who handed it to me if there was anything else I needed to know. He shook his head and said, "That's everything." And then he added one more thing before I walked off. "Follow them exactly." That was the only warning I got. Over time, I saw what happens when people don't follow those rules. Doors close and don't reopen. Rooms get sealed with people still inside. Names disappear from the system before the shift is even over. No reports or investigations or explanations. Just gone. So I did what everyone else does down there. I followed the rules. Every single one of them. For a while. Rule 1. If something bleeds green, hit the emergency lockdown immediately. The first rule looks simple when you read it. Sounds like contamination protocol, right? Something chemical and contained. Something you can handle if you move fast enough and follow procedure. That's what I thought too. Till I saw it happen. It was my third week working sub-level transfer. Night shift. We were moving a container that had come in from a recovery site out in New Mexico. Didn't get the full details. Nobody ever does. But I heard enough from the guys above ground to know it wasn't just debris. The container was about 8 feet long, black, no markings except a serial number stenciled on one side. The material didn't look like metal, didn't reflect light right. Even under the lights above, it had this dull, almost soft look to it, like it absorbed more than it reflected. There were 4 of us on the crew. 2 on the lift, 1 guiding, 1 logging. The guy guiding was named Aaron Pike. Mid-30s, quiet, didn't joke around much. The kind of guy who just did the work and went home. I'd worked with him twice before that night. Solid guy. Kind of person you don't worry about. Well, we had the container halfway off the transport rack when it shifted. Not much, just a slight tilt. Aaron stepped in to correct it. "Easy," he said, one hand on the edge, guiding it back into position. And that's when it happened. There was a sharp edge along the underside, something we hadn't seen when it was secured. His glove caught on it. Not a tear, not a full rip, just enough to expose skin. He pulled his hand back immediately. "Cut myself," he said, more annoyed than anything. Nobody reacted right away. Minor cuts happen all the time down there. Sharp edges, broken material, things that don't behave the way they should. It's part of the job. And then he looked at his hand, and everything stopped. At first I thought it was the lighting. The overheads in that corridor, they flicker sometimes and certain surfaces look off under them. But this wasn't that. It was his blood. Thick, dark, green. It ran slow down his fingers, heavier than normal, almost like oil. Nobody spoke. Aaron just stared at it. "That's not right," he said. And that was the moment. That was the exact moment the rule kicked in. I didn't think about it or hesitate. I turned and hit the emergency lockdown switch on the wall. The effect is immediate. Every door in that section slams shut at once. Not slowly or with a warning. They drop like guillotines. Steel shutters seal the side corridors. The main access door behind us shut so hard the frame rattled. The lights changed from white to red. Air vents reversed direction with a low mechanical roar. The entire space sealed itself in under 3 seconds. The other 2 guys backed away from Aaron without being told. He didn't move. He was still staring at his hand. "Hey," one of them said. "Hey, we're good, just stay there." Aaron looked up, and something was already off. His expression didn't match what was happening. He wasn't panicking or concerned anymore. The irritation was gone too. It was like that moment, the one where he realized something was wrong, had passed, and whatever came after it wasn't reacting the way a person should. "Whose shift is this?" he asked. The question didn't make sense. "It's ours," I said. "Stay where you are." He blinked slowly. And then he looked at each of us one at a time. Not like he was recognizing us. Like he was studying us. "Names," he said. "What?" "Your names," he repeated. Nobody answered him. The blood kept running down his hand, thick drops hitting the floor. He tilted his head slightly, and then he smiled. It didn't match his face. It came too late, like it'd been added on after the fact. And that's when the second part of the rule becomes obvious. You don't try to help. You don't get closer. You don't ask what's wrong. You just wait. Security got there in under a minute. You hear them before you see them. Boots, fast controlled, no shouting or confusion. The door opened just enough to let them in, and then sealed again behind them. 2 of them, full gear, weapons already up. They didn't ask questions or assess or hesitate. Aaron turned toward them as they entered, and for a second I thought he was going to say something. Instead, he moved fast, faster than he should have been able to. He crossed half the distance between them in a step and a half, like his body skipped something in between. They fired immediately. 2 shots, center mass, and he dropped. Just like that. No struggle, no second attempt to get up, just down. The blood that pooled under him wasn't red. It spread out across the concrete in that same thick, dark green. The room stayed sealed for another 15 minutes. Nobody spoke or moved. The security team checked the body, confirmed the kill, and signaled for cleanup. When the doors finally opened again, it was like nothing had happened. Different crew came in, different equipment. They took the body out, scrubbed the floor, and they removed the container we'd been moving. By the time our shift ended, there was no sign of it. No stain or damage, nothing. Aaron Pike's name was gone from the system before I even clocked out. No report or mention or follow-up. He just stopped existing. And that's what Rule 1 is for. Not containment or infection. Replacement. And if you see it start, you don't wait to figure it out. You lock everything down immediately. Rule 2. Never step inside a recovered ship after it powers on by itself. Most of the ships don't do anything. They sit where we put them. Cold, silent, no lights, no movement, no response. You can walk around them, scan them, even touch the surface in some cases, and they don't react. That's how they like to present it. Like they're dead machines. Like they're safe, as long as they're contained. But that's not always true. Some of them wake up. Not often, not on a schedule, no warning, no pattern we've been able to track. They just turn on. The first time I saw it happen was in Hangar 3. That hangar, it's one of the largest ones underground. High ceiling, reinforced supports, enough space to store a full craft without breaking it down. The one in there had been sitting for years, from what I was told. No activity or response. Just another object on inventory. It didn't look like a classic saucer. More like a flattened oval. Smooth surface, dull gray, no seams. About 30 feet across at its widest point. Maybe 10 feet tall in the center, I'm not sure. No visible entrance, no markings. We were doing routine checks. Power systems, structural scans, making sure nothing had degraded or shifted. You know, standard stuff. There were 5 of us in the hangar. Myself, a guy named Louis Calderon, 2 techs on instruments, and a supervisor overseeing the scan. Everything was normal. And then the lights inside the ship turned on. There was no sound or build-up or flicker. Just on. A soft blue glow came through the surface, like the material itself was lighting up from within. Not bright enough to fill the hangar, but enough that you could see something had changed. Everyone stopped. The supervisor said, "Hold position." Nobody moved. The glow pulsed once, slow, then again. Louis took a step closer. "Don't," I said. He didn't stop. Curiosity gets people down there, even the ones who know better. You work around something long enough, you start thinking that you understand it. You start thinking it's just another object. It's not. Lewis walked right up to the side of the craft. There was an opening now that hadn't been there before. A seam had split along the surface, smooth edges parting without any mechanical movement. No hinges or sliding panels. It was just open. Inside was more of that same blue light. No shadows or visible structure, just space. Lewis leaned forward slightly. "Looks empty," he said. And then he stepped inside. The second his foot crossed the threshold, the opening closed behind him. "Lewis," one of the techs said, stepping forward. We could still see him. The surface of the craft wasn't fully opaque anymore. From certain angles, you could see through it slightly, like looking through tinted glass. Lewis was standing about 10 feet inside. He turned slowly, looking around. "You seeing this? They're here," he said. There was nothing there. From where we stood, the interior looked empty. Just that same blue glow on a smooth floor that didn't reflect anything. Lewis lifted his hand, like he was greeting someone. "They're not," he started, but then stopped. His head tilted slightly, like he was listening. Then he nodded. "Okay," he said quietly. "Lewis, come back," I said. He didn't turn toward me. He started walking deeper inside. Slowly at first, then more confident, like he knew exactly where he was going. "Cut the power," the supervisor said. One of the techs moved to the control panel and shut down the external feed. But nothing changed. The glow stayed on. Lewis kept walking. He reached out with one hand into empty space, like he was about to touch something. And then he was gone. He wasn't there anymore. One second he was visible, and the next there was nothing. The interior of the craft stayed lit for another 5 seconds, and then the light shut off. The surface went solid again. The opening reappeared. The supervisor waited a full 10 seconds before giving the order. "Open it." The seam split again. We all stayed where we were. No one stepped forward this time. Security arrived within minutes, and they went in as a team, full gear, weapons ready. They searched the interior for over an hour, and there was nothing inside. No Lewis, no trace of him, no residue, no disturbance, nothing. Just smooth surfaces and empty space. They scanned the entire craft again, no readings or anomalies. Nothing that explained what we saw. Lewis's badge was deactivated before the shift ended. His name was gone from the roster by the next day. No report or investigation. No one asked us to explain what happened. We were just reassigned to a different hangar. The ship in Hangar 3 hasn't powered on again since. Or at least not while I've been there. And that's rule 2. You don't step inside. Doesn't matter what you think you see, or if it looks empty, or if it looks safe. Because if it turns on by itself, it's ready to take you. Rule 3. If you see black liquid in the hallway, spray it with a fire extinguisher and call for help immediately. On April 18th, 1953, a reporter named Neil Varden out of Albuquerque wrote a short piece about a crash site west of Socorro. It never ran the way he wrote it. The version that made print was cleaned up so badly it barely said anything at all. Just a line about military wreckage being removed from federal land after a fire. That wasn't what Varden filed. The original report, the one we were shown years later in a sealed training room with no copies allowed, described a circular impact trench, scorched sagebrush, 3 burned men in military uniforms, and a black substance oozing in ribbons from a split in the wreckage. He wrote that one of the responders tried to kick the material off his boot, and the sole began to smoke. Another man leaned in too close and took the spray of it across his sleeve and neck. Varden said that the man screamed once, dropped to both knees, and never got up again. By the time the trucks arrived, the black material had spread under the wreck like tar under heat. The article ended with a line the government made sure nobody ever read. The thing in the crater was not burning. It was making fire. That piece got buried. Varden got discredited. The negatives disappeared. The crater was flattened. The wreckage was moved, and so was the black material. We still have some of it. That's what Rule 3 is about. Now, when people hear alien, they think bodies first. Gray skin, big eyes, weird hands. And that stuff exists, sure. We've got specimens, partials, things in tanks, things in freezers, things I was told never to stare at too long, even when they're dead. But the ships are worse. Because sometimes what comes out of them isn't a pilot. It's residue. It's fuel. It's waste. It's some part of their systems we still don't understand. And in the case of the black liquid, nobody down there agrees on what it actually is. One lab called it a coolant. Another called it a growth medium. One of the older recovery men told me they used to think it was alive, and one of the scientists corrected him and said, "No, alive is much simpler." Whatever it is, it doesn't stay where you put it. The first time I saw it, I thought somebody had spilled oil. It was late, around 2 in the morning, end of shift stretch, when everybody's tired and the whole facility feels thinner somehow. The corridor I was in connected Storage C to a maintenance junction near Sublevel 2. Narrow concrete hall, exposed pipe channels overhead, drainage grate every 20 feet. Ugly, practical part of the base. No windows or labs, just transit space. I was walking a containment cart back empty after a transfer and doing what everyone does on those shifts. Counting the minutes until the elevator ride up. And that's when I saw the line. First it looked like a wet seam on the floor running out from beneath the base of the wall. Black and glossy, thin as a bootlace. It stretched across the concrete and pooled near one of the floor drains. I remember being annoyed more than anything else. The cleanup crews get sloppy on overnight rotation, and if somebody had tracked hydraulic fluid into a hot corridor, that was gonna turn into paperwork. I rolled the cart closer, and then the line moved. I stopped the cart right there. The black strip quivered once, then spread another inch toward the grate. I don't mind admitting I took 2 steps back. The air felt warmer, too. Not oven hot, not yet, but warm in a way a concrete hallway shouldn't feel at 2 in the morning. Dry, metallic heat. That's the thing nobody tells you until after your first incident with it. The liquid doesn't just react to heat, it makes it. Well, I dropped the cart handle and went for the extinguisher mounted on the wall. Every corridor in that section has one. White cylinder, red handle, inspection tag clipped to the neck. Most people think it's there for electrical fires. It isn't, not really. As I pulled it loose, I heard footsteps behind me. "Problem?" someone called. I turned and saw Miles Farrow coming around the corner from the juncture. He was maintenance, a little short, stocky, always looked mildly irritated, like the whole underground facility was interrupting his personal time. He saw me with the extinguisher in my hand, and then looked down at the floor. "What's that?" he said. "Back up," I told him. He frowned and took 2 steps closer instead. The black liquid had reached the grate now. It spread across the steel bars and hung there for a second, as if testing them. And then I heard the sound. A tiny hiss, just one. A thread of pale smoke rose off the metal. Miles saw it too. That's when the line feeding the main pool twitched, and another ribbon of the liquid pushed out from the base of the wall. I could actually see it feeding itself now, more of it sliding free from some seam behind the concrete panel, gathering into a thicker body on the floor. I pulled the pin on the extinguisher and sprayed. The blast hit the liquid with a hard white plume, and for half a second I thought it wasn't doing anything. But then the front edge stopped moving. The glossy surface dulled. The stuff seemed to contract in on itself, not fully freezing but thickening, the way grease hardens in cold air. The hiss faded. "Call it in now," I said. He should have run back to the wall phone, should have hit the emergency station and reported exactly what he saw. But instead, the idiot leaned in. Not all the way, just enough to get a closer look. People do that. Even here. Curiosity again. Same thing that gets them with the ships. Well, the black mass on the floor looked inert for maybe 3 seconds after I hit it, and then the part closest to the grate found a little patch I'd missed with the spray. It was no bigger than a coin. That was enough. The surface there turned glossy again, and the grate popped. One sharp metallic crack as one of the steel bars warped upward from the heat. Miles jumped back and swore. The black liquid pushed into the opening under the bent bar and disappeared for an instant into the drain channel below. And that was very bad, because once it gets into metal housing or enclosed pipe space, it heats faster. Something about confinement helps it build pressure. I don't know why. I only know what happens next. The drain beneath us started ticking. Fast little metal ticks like a cooling engine, but in reverse, getting louder and more frantic. Heat began rolling up through the grate in waves, and the concrete around it darkened. I shouted to move, and this time Miles listened. We both backed hard down the corridor just as steam punched out of the drain slit in a white burst. A second later came a deep thrum from inside the wall to our left. Not a full detonation, more like a heavy pipe being kicked from the inside. I kept spraying the floor while I retreated, laying a wider cloud over the main spread. That slowed the body on the concrete, but the part that had slipped beneath the grate was already somewhere we couldn't reach. And then the pipe burst. It happened 20 feet down the corridor, where a vertical channel ran from the overhead system into the wall. The metal cover bulged outward once and split open with a blast of steam and black spray. Miles took the edge of it across his left side before he could duck away. He screamed and hit the floor. The spray on him didn't look dramatic at first. It's not movie acid where flesh melts off bone in a second. It's more like the stuff decides where the heat should be, and then puts it there all at once. His coverall darkened where the black liquid struck it, and the smoke started rising off the fabric. His left sleeve caught first. Not fire exactly, more like glowing. A dull orange spread under the cloth, and he started batting at it in a blind panic. I dropped the extinguisher on the floor and dragged him by the collar. He was still screaming. I got him maybe 10 feet down the hall and hit his arm and side with the extinguisher plume as hard as I could. The white cloud covered him, the floor, the wall behind it. That stopped the spread on the fabric, but not before the outer layer of his sleeve had burned through and fused in spots to the skin underneath. The emergency shutters dropped a second later. The whole corridor locked down with that same brutal steel slam I'd heard during Rule 1. Red lights came on. Somewhere overhead, a horn started pulsing. 3 short blasts. Pause. 3 blasts again. Help was finally on the way. Miles rolled onto his back, gasping, clutching at his side. I could smell cooked fabric, scorched insulation, and something sweet underneath it that I don't like remembering too clearly. The black spray coming from the ruptured wall channel had slowed by then. The corridor was cold white with extinguisher dust. That probably kept the breach from becoming a full spread. If the liquid had gotten into both wall channels or reached the main overhead pipe run, it could have burned through half that level before they got a team in there. That's the other thing they teach you later. The fire extinguishers, they're not for putting it out, but they buy time. The containment team came in wearing heat gear and sealed masks. 4 of them. 2 with extinguishers, 1 with a foam cannon, 1 with a long insulated probe unit. They moved like they drilled it 100 times, and maybe they had. They didn't talk to us much. One man checked Miles, looked at his burns, and dragged him toward the mid side of the corridor. The others hit the rupture point with more suppressant, and then opened a steel maintenance panel lower in the wall. I saw what was left of the liquid inside for maybe half a second. I spent the next 4 hours in decon and interview. Same questions over and over. Where did you first see it? How much was there? Did it contact your skin? Did it speak? Miles survived, if you're wondering. Barely. I saw him once after that in the medical section, bandaged from elbow to hip on one side. He looked 20 years older. Didn't say much. Just stared at the wall while a nurse changed out one of the wraps. I heard later that they pulled him off active rotation and moved him somewhere internal, where he wouldn't have to walk transfer corridors again. Maybe that was a mercy. Maybe it was housekeeping. Either way, he never came back to our level again. Rule 4. A cut or scratch from an alien results in immediate termination. We were in Transit Corridor D. Nothing special about that hallway. Concrete walls, overhead piping, graded floor sections every few yards. It connects 2 containment wings and a storage junction, so you pass through it a lot on night shift. It's quiet most of the time. No lab work or active rooms, just movement from one place to another. It was late. End of shift. Me and Johnny were heading back from a transfer job, empty cart between us, just pushing it along and talking. Not about anything important, just normal conversation. That's how you keep your head straight down there. You talk about normal things like you're not surrounded by any of it. Johnny was ahead of me, one hand on the cart, walking backward for a second while he said something I don't even remember now. And then we both heard it. A sound in the vents. Sharp and fast. We both stopped at the same time. Johnny turned first, looking up toward the vent line that ran along the ceiling. It came again, closer. Not a rat, not anything small like that. We didn't say anything, but we both knew what it meant. Movement where there shouldn't be movement. The vent cover about 10 feet ahead of us rattled once, and then it blew outward. The metal plate hit the floor hard, and something came through it with it. Small and fast. It hit the ground on all fours and snapped its head toward us. Its eyes locked onto me. Not Johnny, me. And it moved. I didn't have time to react. It covered the distance in a second, straight at me. Low to the ground, fast enough that it blurred. Johnny moved first. He didn't hesitate. He stepped into it and he shoved me hard to the side. I went down against the wall, shoulder slamming into concrete. The thing hit where I'd been, except now Johnny was there. It lashed out once as it passed him, quick and clean. A single tiny strike across his forearm. And then it was already moving again. Down the corridor, gone in seconds. I pushed myself up immediately. "Johnny," I said. But he was already backing away from me. He was looking at his arm. There was a thin, small line across it. And it was open. Blood ran down his wrist. Red. For now. "Don't," he said. I took a step toward him anyway. "Let me see it." "Don't," he said again, sharper this time. He turned and moved fast toward the nearest containment room, door C12. He hit the panel. Override code. The door opened. I was right behind him. Johnny, wait! He turned just long enough to shove me back out of the threshold. Same way he pushed me out of the path of the thing. The door started closing. Stay out, he said. And then it sealed. I hit the panel immediately. Override denied. I hit it again, denied. Inside, he was already moving. He crossed the room to the far side, grabbed a manual control handle, and locked the internal system down. Full containment. No exit. He looked back at me through the glass. He shook his head once. And that was it. I kept hitting the panel. Open it, I said. The alarm kicked in. The system had already flagged it. Contamination risk. The corridor sealed behind me. The red lights dropped. Heavy doors closed off both ends. He leaned against the wall for a second, breathing steady, still in control. The cut on his arm was already changing. The blood didn't stay red. It darkened first, and then shifted into that same thick green I'd seen before. It didn't happen all at once. It spread through slowly, like dye bleeding through water. He looked down at it once, then back at me. He didn't say anything. The containment team arrived fast. 4 of them, full gear, weapons ready. They didn't ask what happened or check me. They didn't check the panel. They just looked through the glass, saw his arm, saw the color, and that was enough. One of them hit the external control. The system engaged immediately. I heard the vents open up above him, and a low hiss filled the room. The temperature inside the room started climbing fast. You could see it in the air, the distortion rolling across the space as the heat built. The surface of the glass trembled slightly. I hit the panel again, harder this time, telling them to stop, but nobody responded. Inside the room, the heat hit all at once. He dropped to one knee, then the other, still facing forward, not looking away. By then the cut on his arm had gone fully green, and the skin around it was changing in a way I can't really describe. It wasn't burning like normal fire. It was something else. The system ran for another 30 seconds, then it stopped. The vents shut off, the room cooled slowly. The distortion faded from the air and the glass cleared again. He was dead. I stood there for a long time after they were gone, just looking into that room at the spot where he'd been standing. He saved me. And then they killed him. Rule 4. If something touches you, if it cuts you, if it even scratches you, immediate termination. And this brings us to the last rule. Rule 5. If anyone asks you about Area 51, laugh. Tell them it's not real. The rule isn't just for strangers. It's not just about reporters or people online. It's about the people who know you, the ones who notice when something's wrong. After what happened in Corridor D, they kept me on site for debrief. Same questions over and over. Where it came from, how fast it moved, whether I was touched. Once they cleared me, they gave me instructions. If I spoke to anyone about what happened, I was to say it was a workplace accident. Off-site, nothing more. They were very clear about that. I left that night and I drove straight to my mother's house. Didn't sleep or stop, I just drove. She was in the kitchen when I walked in. Coffee going, radio on, same as always. She turned, saw me, and she knew something was wrong. What happened? I told her to sit down. She did. I sat across from her and I didn't drag it out. I told her there had been an accident. I told her Johnny was involved. I told her he didn't make it, and she didn't ask questions. She just cried. After a minute, she wiped her face and asked when it happened. I told her, and she nodded once, and then we sat there in silence. I couldn't look her in the eyes. I went back to work the next day, and his name was gone. No file or shift log. No record he'd ever been there. He worked there 15 years. I asked his supervisor about it. He didn't even look up at me. "You handled it correctly," he said. That was the answer. Later, management sat me down and repeated the instructions. Car accident. No details. Repeat it if anyone asks. And I did, for a while. I said what they told me to say. But I am done with that now. Because Johnny wasn't just a coworker. He was my little brother. And I'm not lying about this place anymore. I'm not following Rule 5 anymore. I don't care what happens to me. I'm gonna tell my mother the truth. I'm gonna tell everyone the truth.